Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling something I think we all have a love-hate relationship with, right? Internal business meetings. They're just part of work life. But what if there was a way to make sure you're not just going through the motions, but actually squeezing every drop of value out of those meetings? Well, our guide today is tech veteran Paulo Laureano. He wrote this insightful blog post titled Internal Business Meetings 101. And let me tell you, this guy's been there and done that. He's got some wisdom to share, and you know me, I'm all about that actionable advice stuff you can actually use. So get ready to take some notes because we're about to break down Laureano's key insights and, more importantly, how you can put them into practice. Let's make those meetings less of a chore and more of a launchpad for awesome. Laureano kicks things off with a point that's surprisingly deep.
He's all about self-awareness. He even dives into some pretty fascinating psychological concepts like the Dunning-Kruger effect and imposter syndrome. I know, those sound a bit academic, but trust me, they're incredibly relevant. Can you break down those concepts for us? Maybe give us a real-world example of how they might play out in a meeting.
Of course. Let's start with the Dunning-Kruger effect. You ever been in a meeting where someone with, let's just say, limited experience on a topic wants to, steer the entire conversation? That, my friend, is often Dunning-Kruger in action. It's that blind spot where the less we actually know about something, the more likely we are to think we're, well, experts. Now, imagine you're in that situation. Dunning-Kruger is unfolding right before your eyes. Instead of letting that meeting go off the rails, a great way to counter that is with a simple disarming question, something like, that's an interesting perspective. Could you tell us more about your experience with topic? It sort of gently nudges the person to share their, shall we say, knowledge base without making them feel cornered.
Oh, that is such a good tactic. But speaking of, feeling inadequate, let's talk about imposter syndrome. I think a lot of us can relate to that one, right?
Absolutely. It's that feeling where you're like a successful chef who's convinced that everyone will find out you're just, microwaving frozen dinners in the back. You've got the skills, you've got the experience, but there's this nagging voice in your head that just keeps telling you it's all a fluke and you're about to be exposed. In a meeting setting, this can look like staying silent when you actually have valuable insights to share, all because you're doubting your own brilliance.
Oh, I've been there. So how do we combat this imposter syndrome monster?
Laureano suggests taking a moment for a little self-reflection before you step into that conference room. Ask yourself, what are my genuine strengths in this specific context? Where might I have blind spots? And what would success actually look like for me in this particular meeting?
It's like giving yourself a little pep talk, but one that's grounded in reality. I love that.
Exactly. It helps you show up with both confidence and humility.
Okay. So you've done your self-awareness homework,
Yeah.
silenced those inner doubts, and you're ready to rock that meeting. But wait a second. L'Oreal doesn't just want you to show up. He wants you to show up as a listening superstar.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the, nodding along while mentally planning your grocery list kind of listening. He's talking about deep, active, dare I say, transformative listening.
He certainly is. In fact, there's this great line in the blog post where he really emphasizes the need to, truly absorb what others are saying. It's about going beyond just the surface level and trying to understand the deeper meaning behind the words.
That's so key, but it's so easy to forget in the heat of the moment, right? We get so caught up in our own thoughts, like formulating our next brilliant point, or maybe mentally refuting someone's argument, and then we miss those crucial details and nuances.
Exactly.
It's like we're listening to reply, not to really understand.
You nailed it. And Laureano points out that that's a recipe for, well, misunderstanding and missed opportunities. When we truly listen, we gain so much more than just information. We get a clearer understanding of the issues, we spot opportunities that we might have otherwise missed, and maybe most importantly, we build stronger, more trusting relationships with our colleagues.
It's amazing how such a simple concept, really listening, can have such a profound impact on our work A&D, our relationships. But how do we actually become better listeners, especially in those high-pressure meeting environments? Are there any practical tips that Laureano recommends?
Absolutely. Laureano offers some really practical advice. One of his biggest tips is to pay attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues.
Oh, tell me about it. We've all been there. Someone's nodding politely, but their body language is screaming, I completely disagree.
Exactly. It's like a whole secret conversation happening beneath the surface.
Right. So how do we decode those nonverbal cues? What should we be looking for?
It's about being observant and really tuning into those subtle signals. Is someone leaning forward, engaged? Or are they, slouching back, disengaged? Are they making eye contact? Or are they avoiding your gaze? These nonverbal cues can often tell you more than words ever could.
It's like becoming a detective of communication.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. So paying attention to both what's said, A and D, what's not said. What else does Laureano suggest?
Another simple but powerful tip is asking clarifying questions. It not only makes sure that you understand the message, but it also shows the speaker that you're genuinely interested and engaged. And here's the big one. Resist the urge to interrupt.
Oh, that's a tough one, especially for those of us who get excited about ideas and want to jump right into the conversation. Still working on that one.
It's a common struggle, but the payoff is huge. When we allow others to fully express themselves without interruption, we create a more, respectful and productive dialogue. And who knows, we might even learn something new in the process.
So we've talked about being a good listener, but what about when you want to share your thoughts? Laureano's got some advice for that too. He's not saying be quiet all the time. It's more like be thoughtful about what you bring to the table. He really stresses quality over quantity. It's not about, dominating the conversation. It's about making sure that your input actually adds value. And for that, he recommends aligning your contributions with the meeting's objectives. So before you jump in with that next brilliant idea, ask yourself, does this really move the conversation forward?
It's like you're becoming a quality control expert for your own contributions. And that's what Laureano wants you to be, a chef of ideas, not just throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Ooh, I like that, chef of ideas.
Right. And he takes it one step further. He says, embrace being the idiot in the room.
Whoa, okay. Now that's a bold statement. How's that a good thing?
It sounds counterintuitive, right? But what he means is, don't be afraid to ask questions even if they seem basic or simple. Sometimes those obvious questions are the ones that everyone else is too afraid to ask, and they can unlock a whole new level of understanding.
It's so true. We've all been in those meetings where everyone's nodding along, but you can tell that half the room is lost. But instead of speaking up, we just sort of go with it.
And that's how things go off the rails. Laureano's point is that real progress comes from clarity and honesty, even if it means admitting you don't have all the answers.
I'm with him on that. Okay, Laureano ties it all together with what he calls the meta goal of any meeting. And this is where it gets really interesting.
The meta goal.
Yeah. He says it's about making sure the best ideas win, even if they're not yours.
I see where he's going with this.
Right. It's about checking your ego at the door and focusing on what's best for the team. He even shares this anecdote about working with what he calls humble, hardworking geniuses with a sense of humor. I think we all aspire to work on a team like that.
It sounds amazing. And, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, fostering that sense of psychological safety. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing ideas, knowing they won't be judged, and letting the best ideas rise to the top.
It's like a true brainstorming session where everyone gets to contribute, even if they're not the loudest voice in the room.
Exactly.
It makes you think, are you more focused on just being right in meetings? Or are you really there to find the best solution? Something to chew on, right?
Definitely.
So to wrap things up, Laureano's Internal Business Meetings 101 is about so much more than just showing up and going through the motions. It's about self-awareness, deep listening, contributing thoughtfully, and ultimately prioritizing the best ideas for the team's success. Big thanks to Paulo Laureano for all the great insights. And to you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive into the art of making meetings matter. We'll catch you next time.